Good evening and welcome to the Cabinet meeting of the 30th of June. Before we move to the formal agenda, there are three items of interest to update Cabinet colleagues on this evening. The first one of those, I want to recognise the fantastic efforts and a true one Medway approach of the team here at the Council, and particularly of our friends at the Historic Dockyard, for an outstanding Armed Forces Day. With the backdrop of one of the hottest Saturdays in recent memory, everyone was kept safe and secure, which would always be our primary purpose at any event, but the feedback from people there was fantastic. So a huge thank you to everyone who attended. More than 17,000 tickets were distributed. Huge thanks to everybody who participated, our uniformed youth, our serving personnel, and of course our veterans and their families. All of the Medway organisations, from the Armed Forces Breakfast Clubs to, again, our uniformed youth groups. A huge presence, particularly pay tribute to the public health team. Their one Medway approach to their very large presence was welcome, and I know people were getting all sorts of advice and guidance from them as well. So a huge thank you to everyone who made that possible. And as I paid tribute to on Saturday, of course, it is the last Armed Forces Day under the leadership of Sir Trevor Saw. We will mention that more towards his time, but a particular thank you for him as well. Secondly, and I want to declare an interest from about 35 years ago, I was incredibly proud to see that the first secondary school in Kent to receive the new exceptional grading was right here in Medway, the Howard School. My old school, the chief executive. So I want to place on record a huge congratulations to the whole team, the trust, the parents, the pupils, the professionals, everyone who's made that happen. Ofsted, of course, is a snapshot, but when you've got the first snapshot of that nature across the region of Kent and Medway, it's right and appropriate that we shout about that. And for the first one across our region to be right here in Medway is appropriate for us to recognise and celebrate. And then finally, a bit of housekeeping. I just want to let colleagues know that tomorrow night's meeting of the Planning Committee will be starting at the later time of 7:30. That will allow everybody to sit back, relax, enjoy, and watch England win in the round of 32, and then come along to a council meeting. What a great way to celebrate that certain England victory. So thank you to the Chair of Planning, Councillor Chrissy Stamp, for her recognition of that importance for our community, allowing everybody to participate in that and then participate in the democratic processes of Medway Council. We'll move on to the formal agenda. We've got apologies tonight from both Tracy and Alex. Are colleagues happy for me to sign the record of decisions from the earlier June meeting?
Agreed.
Thank you. Are there any declarations of disclosable pecuniary interests or other significant interests? None, thank you. We'll move to questions to the Cabinet. I've had a request from Councillor Spalding, because he has a medical appointment to attend, whether he can ask his question first. I'm very happy to agree to that. So we'll take that question first, and then we'll move into the normal order, which will be public questions and then member questions accordingly. We've got a few tonight, so we'll try and keep as close to the 20 minutes. If we get to 20 minutes and there's one or two left, we will take those. We'd always rather take the questions than not. Councillor Chris Spalding, over to you.
I'm grateful for the accommodation, Councillor Maple, thank you. Medway was recently reminded how valuable and essential it is to have a more than adequate fire and rescue service. The derelict building fire at Pier Road required 6 fire engines and a height vehicle, and it took over 18 hours to extinguish. Elsewhere recently in Medway, a garage on fire, 3 fire engines, a kitchen alight saw 2 appliances attend, and the rescue of family pets. Outbuildings and trees in flames elsewhere saw another 3 crude attendants, and not forgetting a certain derelict school was once again in the fire and rescue news. There was a road traffic accident in my own ward, which also saw the air ambulance attend as part of the emergency response. Now, my ward, which is home to 2 Coma, which is control of major accident hazard sites, other major industry and an airfield, as well as high-grade farmland, sits at the edge of Medway as part of the peninsula. It is many, many minutes away from whole-time fire stations in terms of response times. The peninsula, with only one route in and one route out, relies upon its rural on-call fire stations. What action is Medway Council taking, and you as leader of the council taking, to not only ensure comprehensive fire and rescue coverage continues in Medway, but that with all the proposed new homes and businesses suggested in the draft local plan, said protection is improved?
Thank you very much for the question, Chris. And I want to recognise, of course, this was submitted prior to the Fire Authority meeting,
Indeed it was,
which I know you were present at. So let me say 2 or 3 quick things just to bring colleagues up to date and the wider public. There is a big interest in this. I would say 3 things. Firstly, in an unusual occurrence, bearing in mind this is effectively a separate local authority we are dealing with, and it is rare for us as Medway Council to have to deal with another local authority operating in our area. For every other part of Kent and Medway, that's pretty business as usual. That's unusual for us. I received officers' urgent advice on this, which led to a very helpful and powerful letter from the Chief Executive to the Chief Executive of Kent Fire and Rescue. That's been shared with ward colleagues, and that's also been shared with the chairs of parish councils. It's important for those residents and their representatives to know the work that officers are looking at, in particular on this. And I know there's a meeting scheduled between officers and Kent Fire and Rescue officers shortly. We then held the Fire Authority meeting, and so you were present, so you will be aware of what I'm about to say. As I said repeatedly on that day, this situation is not a criticism of Kent Fire and Rescue senior management. I think they have a strong and good senior management. The vast majority of actions that happen through that organisation happen on a consensus basis. I think it's right to say that at the point that we were looking to take a decision as a fire authority, it was a pretty binary choice. Start the consultation, don't start the consultation. So I was very pleased to propose from the chamber of the meeting, and supported by members from many different political parties, a 6-week pause that will allow trade unions to come forward with alternative options. And again, I've got a lot of time and respect for the Fire Brigades Union. It will give elected members from across the region an opportunity to look at this in more detail. But of course, from our perspective in particular here in Medway, where 40% of the proposed cuts are being considered, I think particularly for grain, Cliff is a slightly different conversation, but for grain in particular, I think because of the reasons laid out in your question, particularly around the coma sites, I think further consideration and further evidence will be needed to consider that. So we've got this 6-week period now. We're looking probably at early August for the extraordinary meeting, which was mentioned at the end of the last meeting. And of course, we'll keep everybody informed as to what happens next. Thank you for the question. And I appreciate that you've been raising this issue elsewhere as well. Thank you. Let's then move back to the normal agenda. So questions for the public, of course, to remind colleagues there is a short supplementary available to them. So the next 3 questions will have that available to them. And just for clarity before the questions are asked, Councillor Patterson, who's not with us today, so question B will be answered by Councillor Simon Curry, and question C will be answered by Councillor Harinder Marhill. But we'll go to question A, which is from William Burville. Question, please come ahead.
Thank you very much. Does the leader of the council have full confidence in the portfolio holder for children's services and in the performance of Medway's children's services? In giving his answer, he should explain to the residents why he believes the service is performing effectively and delivering the highest standard of support, safeguarding and accountability that Medway's children and families deserve.
Thank you very much for the question, and for the avoidance of doubt, I have full confidence in all 9 of my cabinet colleagues, but you've asked specifically about one part of our council. So absolutely, I have strong confidence in Councillor Adam Price, the only statutorily required cabinet member, and indeed the senior management of that department, from our Director of Children and Adult Services, and actually the two assistant directors I've worked with in that particular role, both the current incumbent, Kelly Cogger, and the previous incumbent, Donna Marriott, both of whom have added value and better outcomes to this organisation. I've got a long list which will take me more than 3 minutes, so let me give you some highlights where I think we can show progress is being made. We have converted a number of staff from temporary and locum staff to permanent staff. That's something we said we would want to do. That's something we have done. We've ensured that we have got senior roles permanently recruited for the first time in several years, that we've continued to improve on things like the Magic Notes pilot. So this is around using technology to get better outcomes, both for the professionals, but most importantly, for the children and their families and carers. The fact that we have, of course, received a good Ofsted, the first in the history of Medway Council, and we have continued to have regular meetings to build on that work further. Worth recognising, in previous iterations of this council, where we made one step forward in Ofsted inspections, budgets were then cut. That's a statement of fact. We've taken the alternative approach to continue to do that and invest in that. But it's not just about investment, it's about quality of service. We continue to have strong outcomes when it comes to care leavers. We have continued to communicate directly with both service users and professionals within the service. We've had a number of us around this table, including myself and the Chief Executive, going out to see firsthand directly safeguarding meetings to triangulate the information which we trust and know is accurate, but there's nothing better than seeing that directly. And it's been a privilege, a genuine privilege, to be invited into families' homes, sometimes in the most difficult of situations, and they allow us to observe Medway Council's work in place. We continue to work closely and carefully with our unaccompanied asylum-seeking children. Again, a phrase that we try not to use, our young refugees. Those are some of the most vulnerable people in our community. Again, we want to ensure that they're getting the support they need at this most vulnerable time. We've got to a position where caseloads are more manageable. There's more work to do on that, but we've seen those numbers coming down. And ultimately, this is about ensuring that whether it's through the statutory visits that we continue to have, the Children's Services role playing their part in the wider corporate vision, corporate values for Medway Council, or indeed making sure that individual families, parents and children, because we must always remember, in the words of Ofsted, children matter in Medway, that we ensure that we continue to do this. So we're not complacent. And I know the portfolio holder's not complacent. I know the senior management are not complacent. There's always more to do. And it is worth remembering, finally, that this has happened at a time when the other upper tier authority in this region have seen a backward step in their Ofsted for their children's services. If you have a short supplementary question, I'd be very happy to hear that.
Thank you. You have just told the Chamber that Medway Children's Services is performing effectively overall. So on the 28th of May, a final hearing involving a Medway child was rendered ineffective because the author of the Section 7 report for Medway Children's Services did not attend court. The family court found at Medway it could not make a robust final order, that the parties could not receive a fair hearing without hearing from the social worker, and reminded itself, this is in the court papers, that the magistrate said that the delay in this has generally harmful to a child in Medway. As a result, the hearing has been adjourned for a further 2 months and will now be held in Canterbury. How can you describe Medway's Children's Services as delivering a high standard of support, safeguarding and accountability when Medway's family court was forced to adjourn a child's case because the department failed? Will you please look into this, maybe even commission an investigation into how this happened and ensure it will never happen again to a child in Medway? I am willing to provide the relevant court documentation confidentially to the Director of Children's Services if required.
Thank you for that short supplementary question. You will appreciate in a public environment, I'm not going to comment on an individual case, but what I would say is, and people have heard me say this elsewhere, that is exactly why we have a complaints process. And I would encourage anybody who that individual family is, if they feel that the system has not worked for them, to take up that complaints process. And ultimately, if they're not satisfied, they can access the Ombudsman. I would say one individual case, and again, of course, I don't know the individual circumstances around that. There could be a number of reasons why the circumstances you've laid out there could have happened. From my perspective, we're not going to base a service for 63,000 young people based on one individual case. And again, I go back to the fact of us listening carefully to Ofsted and ensuring we continue the good progress that we've made with more to do. But we'll always look carefully at any individual complaint. And again, I'm very happy, and through Democratic Services, we'll ensure you've got the relevant website page to make that first stage 1 complaint. Thank you for your question. Let's move on to question 2. I can't see the questioner in the audience, so I will move to Simon to give a short response, please.
Thank you very much, Vince. So this question is in relation to EV charging and the delivery of it, and I'm giving my response on behalf of Alex, who's not here. Since March 2024, Medway Council has received several inquiries regarding cross-pavement charging solutions, but has not approved any of these requests. This is because Medway has taken a clear and consistent position that we do not support cross-pavement charging at the present time. This approach reflects a deliberate choice to prioritise a strategic borough-wide EV charging network rather than piecemeal property-by-property solution. Medway has just concluded its procurement activity for its on-street charging programme, the Strategic Approach, backed by £2.14 million of LEVI funding and a substantial private investment as well. Allowing cross-pavement charging now would risk undermining that investment and weakening our negotiating position within the market. Medway also faces practical constraints that many other authorities do not. Our lamp columns are positioned at the back of the footway, meaning they cannot be used as safe connection points. Any cable laid across the pavement would create a hazard and conflict with our statutory duty under the Highways Act 1980 to keep the highway safe and unobstructed. Medway's stance is far from unusual. A significant number of other councils across the country have chosen not to support cross-pavement charging, citing safety and liability concerns, risks of simultaneous contact between neighbouring users, misunderstandings around parking rights outside homes, social equality issues for residents without driveways. While a small number of authorities are trialling cable channels, many, particularly those with similar footway layouts or safety constraints, have taken the same position as Medway. Recent national webinars and sector discussions confirm that councils are divided and there is no national consensus that cross-pavement charging is the right solution. Medway remains committed to supporting residents in the transition to electric vehicles. The most effective way to do that is through a comprehensive, affordable, publicly accessible charging network, not through individual domestic arrangements that could compromise safety or investment. We will continue to monitor national trials and may revisit the issue with our appointed charge point operator in future, should circumstances change. But our priority remains delivering a coherent, borough-wide EV charging strategy that benefits all our residents, not just those with off-street parking.
Thank you very much, Simon, for taking that in Alex's absence. The next question is from Lauren Thompson. Is Lauren here? Yeah, great. Thanks, Lauren. Take a seat. And your question, I say, is going to be answered by Councillor Harinder Marhill. So over to you.
Thank you, Councillor Mayfield. Thank you. Given that Medway Council's Parking Services annual report states that parking policy should support local accessibility and consider the need of local businesses, and given that the Council's parking account generated a surplus of 1.25 million in 2024-25, whilst off-street parking operations generated a surplus of 4.65 million, would the Council consider undertaking a time-limited pilot scheme offering the first hour of parking free in selected town centre car parks? If the Council does not support such a pilot, in answering the question, could it please provide any evidence, assessments, consultations, or previous trials that have examined the impact of free parking in town centre footfall and local business activity in Medway? Any data currently held by the Council regarding the relationship between parking charges, visitor numbers, footfall, and town centre economic activity? Thirdly, the financial modelling used to determine whether a 1-hour free parking pilot would or would not be financially viable. And lastly, the criteria that would need to be met for the Council to reconsider such a proposal in the future.
Thank you. Harinder.
Thank you for your question, Lauren. Apologies, I don't quite have the delivery of Councillor Patterson, but I'll do my best attempt. We recognise the important role that parking plays in supporting access to our town centres and the success of local businesses. I certainly know how important that is personally, and we are committed to ensuring our transport policies support vibrant and accessible places. While the parking annual report highlights a financial surplus, you're correct, it is important to note that any surplus from parking is reinvested into transport, public realm, and environmental services that improve accessibility and support local communities. So that includes maintaining roads, supporting public transport, and improving access across Medway in line with our wider responsibilities. In terms of evidence, we have not undertaken a recent Medway-specific trial of free parking. More broadly, national evidence suggests that parking charges are only one of a number of factors influencing footfall and economic activity alongside the quality of the offer, events, public realm, and wider regeneration. Any proposal, such as a time-limited free parking scheme, would therefore need to be carefully considered, including the potential impact on income used to support essential services, the risk of increased congestion, and our commitment to encouraging more sustainable travel choices. However, our approach is guided by the priorities set out in the One Medway Council plan, where we aim to support thriving town centres while also promoting sustainable, inclusive and financially resilient services. Alongside parking policy, we are also supporting town centres through regeneration programmes, events and initiatives that encourage residents and visitors to spend time locally. While there are currently no plans to introduce a free parking pilot, we will keep our approach under review and remain open to considering further evidence in future to ensure our policies best support our communities and local economy. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a short supplementary question.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your answer. I fully accept that parking is not the only factor affecting town centre footfall. The retail offer, online shopping, safety, public transport, business rates, and wider regeneration all matter. However, parking is one of the first practical decisions a resident makes before visiting a high street. If a short, low-cost visit becomes inconvenient or disproportionately expensive, some residents will simply choose not to go at all. That matters because the Council's own strategies refer to accessible, viable town centres and support for local businesses. My question is therefore not whether free parking is a magic solution, it is whether Medway Council has properly tested whether a limited, targeted, first-hour free pilot could remove one avoidable barrier to short visits, while producing measurable evidence on footfall, dwell time, local spend, and parking income. The pilot would allow the Council to make an evidence-based decision rather than relying on an assumption either way. Regeneration cannot rely only on physical improvements or residential development. People still need a practical, affordable reason to enter and use the town centre. Will the Council publish any evidence it holds on parking charges, footfall and business impact? And will it consider a measured pilot rather than simply assuming the Cuddle model is right?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Harinder.
So I absolutely agree with your analysis with regards to perception when it comes to parking and how people choose and the behavioural change that you can affect using parking. I absolutely accept that. However, it does need to all be taken not in the round, but with all the different factors into consideration, which is why it is under review and we are open. I'd love to say more, but I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your question. That finishes the public questions. Let's then move on to members' questions. We've taken question D. Question E comes to me. and that's from the Leader of the Opposition. Very happy to say that very recently, myself and the Chief Executive were invited to a seminar with Minister Ali McGovern and civil servants. At that seminar, it was confirmed that the ongoing timetable for LGR will remain. Just for clarity, that invite was to all leaders and chief executives from all councils in this phase. So there would have been 14 invites for leaders, 14 invites for chief executives across our region alone. And of course, at this stage, we therefore continue to work with the working assumption that the 16th of July is the last day and the likely day, in my personal view, where we are likely to hear. Myself, my deputy leader, and many others were up in Makerfield to support Andy Burnham. We didn't see him, so we didn't have the opportunity to ask him directly his views on this, but we were very pleased to see a strong Labour victory whilst we were there as well. Other parties also participated. They know how they did. So look, we continue to await with interest the decision from MHCLG, and I thank the Leader of the Opposition for his question. Let's move on to question F, which is, I think, going to be taken by Harinder again in Alex's absence. Over to you.
Okay, so just for the record, I'm answering on behalf of Alex Patterson. Okay. All right. Thank you for your question. Regarding the process of parking permits, the council published service standard is that residents should renew their parking permits at least 14 days before the expiry date, although they are able to renew online up to 1 month in advance. Once an application has been approved and payment has been received, the council aims to issue and dispatch the permit to the applicant's home address within 10 working days. Where an application is incomplete or further information is required, applicants are contacted and advised of what is required before the application proceeds. Once approved, applicants can have up to 60 days to make payment. With regards to performance over the past 12 months, upon receipt of payment, all permits have been printed and posted within 10 working days, apart from 2 days in July 2025, where this exceeded by 1 day. Where delays do occur, they are generally the result of incomplete applications, delays in receiving supporting documentation or payment, or periods of particularly high demand. The service continues to monitor workloads to minimize these delays wherever possible. In circumstances where a resident has applied and paid for a permit but has not yet received it, officers will consider the individual circumstances. If a penalty charge notice is issued solely because of an administrative delay by the council, there are established representations and appeals processes through which the matter can be reviewed and any appropriate action taken. The council is committed to improving the customer experience. Residents are encouraged to renew their permits in good time, and service continues to review its processes to improve efficiency, manage peak demand, and ensure applications are processed as quickly as possible. This includes making full use of online applications, monitoring workloads, and maintaining clear communication with applicants throughout the process. Overall, while permits are processed within the published 10 working day service standard, we recognise the importance of issuing permits promptly and will continue to review our performance to ensure residents receive the high standard of service they rightly expect. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then that takes us to the final question from Councillor Anang, who I think actually is going to be answered by Zoe rather than Nina. I think, is that right? Yeah.
That's correct.
Zoe, over to you.
That's correct. Thank you. The question is, could the portfolio holder explain the rationale behind the current charges to voluntary and non-profit organisations for the use of council facilities, including community halls and green spaces? In giving my answer, could I explain if any considerations have been made towards reduced rates, subsidies, or exemptions for groups delivering community beneficial events, and what steps are being taken to ensure costs do not discourage such activities? And I thank Councillor Annan for his question. Prices for the majority of bookable rooms or areas at council-owned facilities, including at community centres and green spaces hire, are set by the council in February each year as part of the budget setting process. Medway Council is aware that the overwhelming majority of users are non-profit organisations, and when fees and charges are set annually, they aim to reflect this. There are occasions when voluntary and non-profit organisations are charged at a much lower rate than commercial organisers, and on some occasions, such as the Park Friends Group's green spaces, are exempt altogether. The charges for hiring a public space to run an outdoor event are mainly there to cover the work the council must do, not just the use of the land itself. When any organisation, including a voluntary or non-profit group, applies to hold an event, the council must review the application, work with different departments, and make sure proper safety, risk, and management plans are in place. Because of this, a fee is charged to help cover those costs. However, community and voluntary groups are charged a much lower rate than commercial organisers, and Park Friends groups are exempt altogether. This reflects a deliberate effort to support community activity while still ensuring the council can manage events safely and responsibly. The Brook Theatre, whilst currently undergoing building work, and the Central Theatre operate a tiered pricing structure, which ensures that the community groups automatically benefit from reduced hire rates. For these groups, the venue hire fee is set at a level designed to cover the full operational and administrative costs associated with delivering events within the theatres. All fees and charges are approved by Cabinet prior to publication in accordance with the Council's governance processes. The Corn Exchange operates with a clear commercial objective while maintaining a strong commitment to accessibility for community and voluntary groups. Higher charges reflect not only the use of the space, but also the ongoing overheads required to run the venue, including staffing, utilities, maintenance, and the infrastructure needed to deliver events safely and professionally. Higher fees are set and approved by Cabinet, providing a transparent and consistent framework. In addition, every booking request, whether from a commercial, charitable, or community organisation, requires council input, including application review, coordination across departments, and checks to ensure appropriate safety, risk, and operational planning. Charges, therefore, contribute to both these administrative requirements and the venue's core running costs. Discounted bookings are assessed on a case-by-case basis, recognising the differing scale, purpose, and community benefit of events. Any reductions are applied through a structured matrix, ensuring a fair, consistent, and transparent approach. This balance model enables community and voluntary groups to access the Corn Exchange at reduced rates where appropriate, while ensuring the venue remains financially sustainable and responsibly managed. Prices for sports centre facilities and green space hire are set annually by the Council in February as part of the budget setting majority. The overwhelming majority of users are non-profit organisations, and the fees and charges set annually reflect this.
Thank you very much indeed, Zoe. That concludes the questions to Cabinet. Thanks to all those who submitted questions, and thanks to colleagues for answering them. Let's move to the reports we have in front of us tonight, starting with another reason why the Children's Services team is doing so incredibly well under this leadership, the fact we were chosen as one of the 7 kinship zones. Adam, over to you.
Thank you, Vince. This report is about the Kinship Zone programme update, which is the delivery of the Department for Education Kinship Pilot from April of this year to March of 2028. And it updates Cabinet and everybody on Medway Council's role as one of 7 local authorities which were selected by the Department for Education to take part in the Department for Education's kinship programme. It recognises local practice, or the department recognises local practice strengths and readiness to deliver. And it's about strengthening family-based care, improving outcomes for children, and contributing to national policy development. It's also aligned with Medway Council's own strategic priorities around early intervention, prevention, improving stability for vulnerable children. And the programme nationally combines 2 key elements. One is the Kinship Allowance Pilot, KAP, non-means tested financial and tax exempted support to eligible carers of children under 18 at national minimum fostering allowance rates. And in addition, participating kinship carers are eligible to claim child benefit payments. And the second key element of the programme is the Family Network Support Package. And this is targeted, time-limited practical interventions in order to remove barriers to safe kinship care. So this integrated programme represents a shift towards a preventative, family-led system, supporting children to remain safely within their family networks, and also reducing reliance on more costly and also disruptive care placements that in several cases are at a distance from children and young people's local networks and kinship roots. As it is a pilot, there's a lot of cross-council department working, because I've mentioned about the different benefits, etc., that have to be worked out. And finally, you may have seen the billboards, which make me proud, because children matter in Medway. These are the billboards about the kinship programme. I fully intend to meet with the full team once they've all taken up post. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adam. Really important issue. Happy to take questions, comments. Nina, please.
Thank you, Adam, for your leadership in this, and as well as the head of Children's Services who've submitted this report. I'm in support of this, and it has been a long time coming. The support for kinship carers, especially under SGO, as well as child arrangement order. And also, I think what we used to hear regularly was the means testing was something that would cause anxiety, but alleviating that would reassure those families who want to step forward and make sure that they, wherever safe, wherever it is still practically safe for the children to remain within the family support network, or them to be able to do so with the protective factors around them as well. And I think you are right in pointing out that sometimes when children come into care, if the placement is not readily available in the nearest area, sometimes it means that the children will sometimes end up in placements outside of the local authority, and that disrupts their other connections in the local area, such as school, friendships, etc. So I think by enabling friends or family support network to look after the children, it enables the children to maintain those positive ties, and if they've built relationships with trusted teachers, etc., it really helps them maintain those ties as well. So I think I'm fully supported, and like I said, it's great that Medway has been chosen as one of the pilot zones, and depending on the outcomes, it will be fed back into the national evaluation before it's rolled out. So fantastic opportunity for us to learn as well as contribute to the national learning, and hopefully becoming policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Teresa, please.
Yes, I mean, I think congratulations are in order, actually, for bringing this forward so quickly, Adam, to you and the team. And referring earlier to the question, your commitment to children in Medway, and particularly those in our care, is second to none. And I know that among partners, among families themselves, among our staff, the way that you have responded to your role as portfolio holder is regarded very highly indeed. And actually, we can view this being chosen as one of the 7 areas as endorsement of that work. And absolutely, as Nina has said, we mustn't forget that kinship carers come to their role most frequently in traumatic circumstances. There may have been a family bereavement, somebody may have gone into prison, social services may have had to step in when a child goes into care, and the family have to get it very quickly involved in those arrangements. And of course, other circumstances that cannot be always foreseen. There is no doubt that children will thrive more in a family environment with people that they know. And for kinship carers, very often it's not just the children who suffer disruption, it's the kinship carers themselves who find that sometimes in trying to secure the elements of a child's life that they want to, such as going to school, is something that's actually quite difficult and costly to do if the kinship carer doesn't live in that area. They may even have to move. So the identification of these families, working with our family hubs, working with schools, working across communities with your campaign to make sure that people know about it. We're placing this incredibly important group of people in a much better position than they have ever been under any government. Because despite a lot of lobbying, despite the fact that kinship care has always featured in the care of children whose parents are unable to look after them, there has never been previously, despite a lot of lobbying from all sorts of people, an actual attempt to give kinship carers the same rights as foster carers and the same level of support. And I'm very hopeful, Adam, and I'm sure that you'll be bringing this forward, that we can celebrate the kinship carers in the way that we celebrate the families who look after our children in care, and make sure that they can network amongst themselves, because we've now got the capacity to do it. So I'm really looking forward to the way this is being implemented. And I think the staff have responded incredibly well over a short period of time, because, of course, they're as aware as we are that this is an area of family life that has been neglected by the state in the past. And now they're getting the recognition that they deserve under your leadership. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Teresa. I can't see anybody else, so before I come back to you, Adam, I mean, I think, as I've said elsewhere, when you think about children's services generally, of course, these are services which the vast majority of Medway families and residents won't ever interact with. And you kind of say, thank goodness, and they're, you know, wanting to make sure, therefore, that those who have to get the relevant support they need. And then within that, that very specific caucus, that grouping of those who, through the care system, stay with a family member. And if you stopped most people, because actually this has triggered a lot of conversations. Lots of people perhaps weren't even aware of the concept of kinship care through the kind of statutory processes that we have as a council. So being part of this pilot, and again, it is a real testimony to yourself, to the team under Leanne's leadership and Kelly's direct leadership. It's a testimony that government have selected us to be one of those 7. The fact it started all of those conversations, that, and I pay tribute in particular to ITV Meridian, that their piece on this was really thoughtful and trying to explain to people actually what this is all about. Because again, many people, when they see that flyer, when they see that poster, it will trigger some questions. So I think part of being this zone is, of course, supporting those families and the young people at the heart of this. But part of this is a wider societal conversation, as Teresa says, around putting this on the radar of people, and then perhaps that consideration for the difficult circumstances when families find themselves in the processes of children's services and social care, whether this is something to be further considered. That will now be an easier conversation for many in Medway because of us being part of this. And for example, this very report coming to Cabinet tonight, for example. So I recognise this is a work in progress. We're still relatively early on in the pilot, and we will all as a Cabinet be very interested to see how this progresses. Back to you. Thanks, Adam.
Yeah, thank you, Vince, and also thank you, colleagues, for your supportive comments. It's been said that it takes a village to raise a child. So at very difficult junctures of a child's life that we're talking about, if you also remove that village, then that child is going to be suffering more. So if there can be that support within the family or within the wider community that they're used to, with the support through this programme, then the outcomes are going to be better for the child. And also it's going to remove that need for sometimes placements far away from Medway as well, which is, and often expensive as well, yeah, I'd like to thank Chi Chirinjo and the work of colleagues and the growing team which is being appointed, and I look forward to meeting them. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Is the report agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Let's move on then, staying with you, Adam, for the sufficiency strategy 26 to 29, a place to call home.
Thank you, Vince. And yes, I'd like to thank in this item Kelly Cogger and James Harmon So Medway Council has a statutory duty under Section 22G of the Children's Act 1989 to secure, so far as is reasonably practical, sufficient accommodation for looked after children in their area, or in our area in this case. So the priorities within this strategy is early help, prevention, effective placement planning, so that children can remain safely within their families or communities where possible. Reducing the reliance on high cost or out of area provisions, similar to what we were talking about in the earlier item, while improving outcomes and also stability for the child. Now, this report has been to Children and Young People's scrutiny, and you'll see under Section 8 the comments of the Children and Young People's Overview and Scrutiny Committee. And having read through that, there were queries regarding the NTS, which is the National Transfer Scheme, from a member, and that you can find on page 39. And also there was a question about whether we have care leavers in temporary accommodation. That's on page 40. And I know that I was able to watch that item, which was and the answer to that question is it's very rare for a care leaver to actually go into temporary accommodation, because the whole thing about the sufficiency strategy is to make sure that we've got suitable places for them to go. So there will be very rare circumstances when that happens. So members of the Cabinet, I recommend that we note the comments of the Children and Young People's scrutiny as set out in Section 8, and that we note the progress of the sufficiency strategy that's just come towards the end. That's the 2023 to 2026 one. And we agree the sufficiency strategy 26 to 29 priorities as set out in Appendix A of the report. Thank you. Vince.
Thank you very much. Any colleagues wish to comment on that? Teresa, please.
Yes, again, Adam, we can't emphasise the importance of this statutory provision enough, because it mandates us to do what everybody wants to do, and that is ensure safe homes for these children. And I, commend the report to colleagues, because there has been a rise in the number of children coming into care, and therefore a rise in the number of places that we need to find, and pressure on our permanency arrangements to find adoptions. And I note particularly the average age of the children coming into care now, between 8 and 9, a rise in the age of children coming into care over the last few years, and with that come complexities. It does, however, indicate that a lot of work is going in to keeping families together, and that those early interventions are working, and that when children do come into care, it is a last resort, in the sense that there are no other safe arrangements for them. And that makes it even more important that the arrangements that we make for them are as good as they can be, and accessed as quickly as possible when it becomes clear that there isn't another safe place for the children to be. So, this report is more than the sum of the parts. It's about making sure that there's always somewhere to go for children, even though we try lots and lots of things to keep families together, and that forever parenting that we have to do as corporate parenting is there as a safety net, so that nobody is missed out. So this is a very important report. It's got some really interesting appendices, some interesting statistics too. We can see what the trends are. And of course, the report looks beyond the time that the children are in care, and to what might happen to them as they come towards adulthood, which of course is very important as all, and as corporate parents speaks to what we would want for all of the children who we are responsible for. As the report tells us, around 500 children in Medway. So I'm really pleased to see this report. I'm pleased to see the cross-council working in securing safety for the children, which of course will continue. And the fact that we can, within the bounds of this report and lots of other things that we do, remain ambitious for them as well.
Thank you, Teresa. Nina, please.
Again, thank you, Adam, for this report. And I do welcome the sufficiency strategy, which is a requirement for every local authority in any case. But I think the reason I also welcome this is because we are planning forward, and it does acknowledge the challenges, but we are also very clear that every child deserves to live in a safe and caring household where their emotional and physical well-being is also promoted at all times. And I am also aware that as much as a lot of work is going into recruiting foster carers or making sure that the accommodation are regulated, etc. At the same time, I think there are also very good practices happening in terms of trying to, in terms of securing local children, Medway's children, local placements so that they are able to continue their education as well as friendship groups. And sometimes with good planning and joined up approaches, I have also seen that even for children who come into care at a later stage, the local authority, Medway, has been able to secure local placements because of that good planning taking place. So I think in terms of sufficiency strategy, it is something that is, and also I wanted to highlight some best practice where even because of the child's complex needs, if the child's complex needs related support accommodation, supportive accommodation is not readily available at the first instance, even if the child goes away, I think there is always the emphasis to try and bring the child back once the child is ready. So I think that emphasis needs to carry on. Yeah, lots of positive sort of framework to move forward in terms of strengthening the sufficiency. So I welcome this. Thank you. And thank you to all the officers involved in formulating this. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Nina. Before I go back to Adam, I think just two things from my perspective. This is, again, just a recognition of the one Medway approach. And I think that's particularly important, that there will be people perhaps thinking of standing for election to the new unitary authorities, shapes, sizes, names to be confirmed across the region of Kent and Medway. And they will want to look on and try and understand, well, what on earth does a unitary authority do? And as we all know, that role of being a corporate parent, that role of having 63,000 young people to look after, and we look after them all, but we look after some just a bit more for all the reasons laid out in this report. I think actually this report is critical for those individuals and indeed council officers, who are potentially working either in a district or borough or a county council at the moment, to think about how it all works together. And again, I think this is a really good example showing how we as a unitary authority, everything under one organisation, can tackle one of these challenging issues. And this is a challenging issue. There's no doubt of that. We know there are challenges with housing generally, not just in Medway, but across the country. So the fact that we've got, I think, a really good document here that shows work done, more to do, and we're not complacent about that in the slightest, I think sends a good message. And it sends a message to those who are looking on to say, what will all of this mean to our looked after children in care as we move forward? So I'm really grateful to everyone who's worked on this. And again, another very clear example, literally the last words on the back page, another clear example of showing this administration, this council, proving that children matter in Medway. Adam, back to you.
Thank you, Vince, and thank you, colleagues. And I remember in my earlier days of doing management training that and also I think there was a course on sociology in my first year as well about Hertzberg's hierarchy of needs. And it's absolutely the case that for all of us as like human beings, the basic needs need to be covered first, and that includes a safe home, which is what that strategy is all about. Because once you've got that safe home, you can start to concentrate on education, and in the case of our looked after children, on like developing your networks and your relationships with teachers and friends, like etc. and all that. So it's important that we have to like review and renew this like sufficiency strategy, and this is going to take us forward in towards 2029 after LGR. And just to say that we mustn't lose sight of also the opportunity which we have through corporate parenting of like celebrating, whether it's through the annual like summer barbecue or the time to shine. And of course, it was during the last year that we had Kelly Holmes, who was our like surprise visitor. Yes, I would advocate to anybody wanting to stand for council, because they're all going to be within Kent unitary authorities, and we've got a lot to share. And it is a privilege to be Medway's leading dad, as like Teresa has, often like referred to me as well. Thank you very much. Then, cheers.
Thank you. The recommendation is agreed. Thank you. Let's move on to item 7. Refer colleagues to the supplementary agenda, which has got the feedback from ONS as well. Simon, over to you.
Thanks very much, Vince. So this is in relation to our Medway Developer Contributions and Obligations Guide consultation. It sounds quite dry and boring, but actually it sits at the heart of what we do in planning in so many different ways. One of the things about this report is that it's a piece of sort of supplementary planning guidance, so it's a requirement on us to do it, that drives the whole delivery of things like infrastructure funding and stuff like that for us. So it's a really important piece of work that's got to go through tonight. Basically, the supplementary planning approach is that there are two elements to it. One is around what we've sort of familiarly know as 106 contributions. That's the financial element that developers are required to give to the community in terms of delivering key infrastructure like school places, parks and other public open space, stuff like that, the money that costs, and health facilities and things like that. But there's also an obligation requirement as well, which you can see in part 4 of the report, where developers, there may be restrictions on land use, so operations that they need to carry out in or over or under the land required beforehand, that kind of thing, making sure that the development that they're undertaking is delivered in a sound and sustainable way. And this obligation applies to 10 or more houses within any development, although there is some guidance on those developments of 10 and less as well in here as well. So basically that's what the report covers. There has been a very detailed consultation on this, which is also part of the process, the requirement within the process, which was carried out in March to May this year. And as Vince mentioned, it's been to ONS for scrutiny there as well. And those comments from the consultation and from ONS have been taken on board and incorporated into the final report that we see tonight. So just looking for colleagues' support for this and taking it through on the recommendations.
Thank you, Simon. Any colleague? Yeah. Luella?
Thank you, Vince. Thank you, Simon. I support it. I support the updated version. I think it clearly lays out the impact of these developments on sort of health, education. It's got waste management, public realm, town centres. They're all covered. I'm particularly interested in affordable housing. I'm pleased to see that is listed there clearly, and it also highlights who is able to operate the affordable housing, sort of what providers can do that. One thing I'm really pleased to see, as I always am, is that it clearly says for affordable housing, it should be indistinguishable from the market housing. So, yeah, it covers a wide range of things, but they all impact all of us. Every bit of development impacts us all, so I'm pleased to see that, and I support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Teresa?
Yeah, thank you, Simon. And this is another element of the tremendous work that you've done towards actually bringing a local plan into being after all of these years. Later on this month, we will have our Major Developers Forum. And I think this document sets out very clearly what we expect from developers, and that's important. They should know what we expect. We should be able to be clear about what we expect from them and clear to the public as well. about why that is, because we want to make sure that the proper infrastructure is there, as Luella has said, and we want to make sure that there is a greater amount of affordable housing, and the report says that very clearly for those high value sites for the first time in Medway, 30%. Moving to 25% for lower value ones, and for those with the most difficulties, at least 10%. Now, I would always like there to be more, but that is definitely a step forward compared to what we've had in the past. And as I say, this document is here for anybody to see. I hope we'll have some copies to wave around when we come to the major developers forum, because this is about our expectations for achieving the highest standards possible for people in Medway. And those who want to work with us should know that. And those who don't think that these standards are important, I'm afraid, will have to take their business elsewhere. So it's a really important document. I'm looking forward to it landing, and to making sure that we get these developer contributions in a timely way for the things we need.
Thank you, Teresa. Before I go back to Simon, this is critically important with the upcoming inspection of the local plan. I'm grateful, very grateful actually, for the helpful feedback and views from overview and scrutiny. And as you say, rightfully, those have been considered alongside the contributions made in the consultation. It wasn't a huge number, but actually this is quite a technical process. So that's perhaps not surprising. And if you look at some of the, people like the National House Builders Federation making a contribution, I always want to hear from them. They're an important part of this process. We need house builders to build homes. I know that's stating the obvious in one sense, but, and this guide being up to date, modern, reflective of what Medway deserves, and it is about deserves, because as our Chief Planning Officer often refers to the fact that part of the Section 106 contributions is to make an unacceptable planning application acceptable. He said that at committee, he said that in many other places. And that's true, that is true. So from my perspective, I'm incredibly grateful with everything else going on in the world of planning and the local plan. This is a really detailed, focused, but again, easy to understand document. It's quite long, but it needs to be, because there's a lot of stuff in there. And as has been made reference, I've talked both to Teresa's point around the percentage. That is right, that's where we should be. And that puts us more in line with other places across the region of Kent and Medway. And Luella is absolutely right. And there are some fantastic examples already across Medway of the pepper potting. We don't want ghettoisation in Medway. There is nothing worse. And actually, there's some really good examples. And I would pay tribute actually to one of our SME developers, Esquire. Their ability to just, you would not be able to say that's the affordable home, that's not. And that's what we want. We want cohesive, combined communities working together. And developers have got a role to play in that. And this guide will help us help them. So thank you to everyone who's made that happen. Simon, back to you.
Yeah, thanks very much for colleagues' comments on this. I completely agree. I mean, I think the thing about this is that it is partly the reason why we didn't get a great deal of response on the consultation is because this is actually just a newer version of what was already in place with up-to-date figures and accurate data and such like. But I think the other thing is that it's about the way that in the last few years, developers and ourselves are working more closely together. There is no doubt that that approach of asking the developers to come in, sit with us, talk things through and accept the responsibilities that they have. They are comfortable with that. We're currently in the middle of fighting a lot of public inquiries. The 3 are just coming to conclusion at the moment. I think there's 2 more in the pipeline. And in the context of this document has been used as a guide for the Section 106 discussions within those planning inquiries, and the developers have accepted it because they're quite comfortable with that. The last iteration of this was 2018. It was desperately needed to be upgraded. The new local plan coming through requires this document to be updated as well. So we're in that place now where it is updated. There is a certain urgency because of the acceptance of the developers in terms of the principles of this. We do really need to get it through tonight, if colleagues are happy with that, in order to have it in place, ready for the conclusion of the inquiries and the upcoming local plan and public hearings and such like. But in that respect, it's all about working in partnership with developers and them accepting their responsibilities. And I think that's writ large in the way this relationship, referring to the developers forum coming up in a month or so's time. That's another example of how that's working. So thanks for your support on this, and I put the recommendations as laid out.
Thank you very much, Simon. And just in your comment there, I refer colleagues specifically to recommendation 1.5, which of course makes recommendation 1.2 urgent for the reasons you've laid out there. That's unusual. We don't use that very often as a cabinet, but it is right and appropriate, and I'm very supportive of that for the reasons you've laid out. Cabinet colleagues happy to agree recommendation 1.1 to 1.5. Is that agreed? Yes. Thank you. Let's move on. Introduction of mobile home fee policy. Luella, over to you.
Thank you, Vince. So first of all, thanks to the officers who've produced this policy and paper, Bex Wilcox and the private sector housing team. So as Medway Council, as a council, all councils across the country, we have a duty to licence park homes in our area, and that's to ensure good standards for those people living there, as well as to ensure that they're managed by a fit and proper person. So the Mobile Homes Act 2013 introduced powers to councils to charge fees to be able to cover the cost of licensing. And because of our range of statutory duties under the Mobile Homes Act, we do it, but we want to be able to recover the costs because obviously it's an expense to the council. So the regulations include licensing and regulating mobile home parks, carrying out inspections and enforcing those licence conditions, investigating complaints and taking appropriate action, maintaining publicly accessible registers of site rules and the fit and proper persons. Across Medway, there are 5 licensed parks, and residents in parks such as these can have a proportion of vulnerable people. So it is imperative that we maintain good standards in these parks. So the policy sets out the fees and charges to recover the costs of undertaking the functions that I've mentioned and to ensure all the parks are up to standard. This includes officer time, as I've said, the inspection and administration of the licensing and follow-up and complaints. And just to say the benefits will give us safer communities there, improved well-being, improve the standards and ensure financial sustainability for the costs. So stronger regulatory oversight of the park rules and enhances the service capability to better handle complaints and routine site inspections. So I just want to highlight that there's no profit here for the council. It is literally covering the costs of what it takes to maintain standards for the people that live in the parks. So I'll leave it there if anyone has any questions.
Thank you very much, Luella. Very detailed overview, which I think will make this item clear for those who are watching on. I'd say from my perspective, you've raised a point, and this is critically important. This is about covering costs. So absolutely, when we come to and this will form part of the fees and charges we look at the budget meeting in February. Of course, we'll be looking carefully at how the costs of carrying out this policy continue to take place, and we'll look specifically at that when setting those accordingly in future years. So just from a finance perspective, just to be absolutely crystal clear, this is about ensuring bluntly that the rest of taxpayers are not paying for the enforcement here, because it's in everyone's interest to have this enforcement of safeguarding, etc., in place. Critically important. So I do support this, but I just want to, from a finance perspective, be clear. It will form part of the regular fees and charges. And there are a number of fees and charges across the council which are there just to literally cover the cost of service. This is not the only one through that huge document that does that particular thing to make sure we're not profiteering. This is literally about covering the cost for taxpayers. I can't see anybody else, so back to you, Luella, if there's anything else you want to say in conclusion. Of course, I do recognise as well the comments made by ONS, but back to you.
Thank you, Vince. And part of my follow-up was to say that the report had been to the Regeneration, Culture and Environment Overview and Scrutiny Committee, who had several questions, largely operational. They have been answered with a briefing paper, so they are in the detail of the report as well. So if anyone's interested, they can see that that's been answered. And I just want to sort of say the recommendations, but say, first of all, that effective delivery of the policy will help to prevent poor living conditions, and also means that appropriate action can be taken as and when it's needed. So the Cabinet is asked for the recommendations, or I shall move. The Cabinet is asked to note the comments of the Regen Overview and Scrutiny Committee and to approve the implementation of the mobile homes fee policy as set out in Appendix 1.
Thank you very much, Luella. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Let's move on to the next agenda item, which sits with me, agenda item 9. I move the recommendations as laid out in paragraph 1. This is a pretty technical report. The reason this is coming to us today is twofold. One, because there has been a legal challenge elsewhere in the country. I refer you particularly to paragraph 4.4 in that area. And also the fact that to change the scheme as a whole, the council tax reduction scheme as a whole, you effectively need to give 12 months notice. So if we weren't bringing this forward today and waiting for the normal process, we would leave both individuals and the council corporately at risk. The information is laid out. Like I say, it's a pretty technical response. There will be a small cost if this is agreed by the nature of the prescription that we're setting forward for these individuals. You can see that laid out in paragraph 8.1, and as referred to there, because of the nature of it being a transitional protection, that cost will go down year on year. I'm happy to take any questions, but I say it's predominantly a legal and technical update. Teresa, please.
Legal and technical though it is, it's important to have clarification, and particularly for those who are in receipt of transitional protection as they migrate to universal credit. And I think particularly of casework that I have had involving quite vulnerable people for whom this system is quite difficult to navigate, actually. And I've been very grateful to Gemma Gilly and the team for helping me help those constituents navigate this situation. And by not treating the transitional protection as income, it actually simplifies the whole process. Trying to treat it as income was causing all sorts of problems, including throwing people into housing benefit arrears unnecessarily, even though they were being repaid the sort of underpayment that they had been victims of at a later date. It is very worrying. And this is nobody's fault. Universal credit works differently to legacy benefits, and being able to give people a clear steer and understanding that when they come to that migration, and not everybody who is going to migrate has migrated yet. This is being done over quite a long period of time. So as we speak tonight, there are still people who are yet to migrate. And so helping them understand what's going to happen to them, I think it is really important. It gives clarity to our teams. And as I say, is a welcome simplification of the whole process, which I think was starting to happen actually even before the legal determination, because it's in fact common sense. So pleased to see this. It's on our statute now, and I hope that it alleviates worries for people who are in that position now and others who will be in the future.
Thank you very much, Teresa. I think that's a very helpful contribution, so thank you very much for that. And again, I'd reiterate your thanks to the team who have pulled this together. And you're right to say work was ongoing even before the legal case, but that has certainly focused minds, and that is a major reason why that's come forward in such a timescale. People happy to agree the recommendations as laid out in paragraph 1? Thank you. We move to item 10. A reminder to colleagues that for the next 3 items, There are blue papers. Please avoid giving the details within the blue papers. No one has indicated to me that we're seeking to go into closed session, and I'm certainly not seeking to go into closed session. So happy to start, and I'm going to go to Harinder, I think, on this one to begin. Thank you.
Thank you, Vince. So it's the regular outing for IPM North, another cabinet meeting. So I think we're all quite used to the story so far. So the update, it starts with us in administration coming in, and we were determined under the leadership actually of Councillor Curry, who wanted to make a success of the IPM North site and actually rescue it from the position that it had been left in. We went out to the sector leaders and consulted in terms of the options that were available to us. We learned all sorts of things about mid-tech, this tech, that tech, and so we know all variations of offers that we could have put out there, and we came with we settled on a solution for a mix of industrial and mid-tech, and it was then decided following that we would go to work with a partner, procurement partner, to find and to do some soft testing for market testing to see what the appetite was. The appetite seemed to be there was a market for it, and we had some preliminary discussions. So everything in that front has been progressing as we'd expect. So it was a testament to the correct decision that we'd taken to continue doing that. However, what we have had is some good news in that there is a opportunity for a direct disposal, which is both cheaper, quicker, saves officer time, saves money if I haven't already said cheaper, and will sort of get us to where we want to be all that much quicker. So it is achingly close to very, very good news. So we're waiting on that. But what it would mean is sort of going back and rescinding on the previous update, which was going out with the soft testing and to get a procurement partner and developing it with a partner in that way, and rather than having a 7-year contract with them, this lease a lease that would take us to 2173, I think, is far better. So the Labour administration in 2173 will be looking back at this and they'll be commemorating it, and I'm sure it'll still be the consciousness of Vince Maple uploaded into a robot talking about it. So it's all good news, but I'm sure Councillor Curry will be updating with a much more sensible update. Thank you.
Thank you very much. For the avoidance of doubt, I will not be the leader of this council in 2173. Simon.
I'm hoping a lot of it isn't undersea by then with the sea level rise rate going, but we'll not worry about that now. No, thanks to Harinder for where he's brought this project to at this stage. And I'm going to have to say, I've said it a few times, quite brilliant work by the officer team involved here under the regeneration thing to get us into this state just 3 years in of our administration is really quite remarkable and shows a real diligence and hard work and a real skill actually in understanding how markets and businesses work with sites like this. It's not easy to get a site like this into the condition where somebody's saying, actually, I'm really keen on this. I want to come in and take it on till 2173. I mean, that is quite remarkable. So a real major piece of work by the guys involved in getting us to where we are. And I think it really sums up how their approach to this, because we're not precluding the original decision we made a few months ago regarding the option to go out to procurement on a partner. It's just that we're building it into the structure of what we're trying to achieve here. Option 5.2 in the report sort of highlights how we're going to do that. And I think one of the things that we can be aware of is that from an economic point of view, this is really good news. But I think also from a Medway community and employment point of view, this is brilliant. I mean, we're looking, if we can get this through in the next few months, and Arinda's alluded to the fact that it's nearly there. This will guarantee jobs in Medway for a huge number of people for a long period of time. I mean, what more do you want from an administration than say, actually, from a jobs point of view, here it is, kind of thing. So I think this is great news, and it goes down to the really brilliant hard work by the team involved, and yourself, Richard, and the other officers as well. So it's really good. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Teresa?
I mean, I think it's important to acknowledge the modesty, Simon, of yourself and indeed Harinda, and actually prior to that, Lauren Edwards, when she had the portfolio when we first came into administration, because this is an example of our determination not to continue a passive attitude towards bringing this site forward that had prevailed under the last administration. It was clear that the previous strategy was not working, but I'm afraid the political drive to help officers make the changes that had to be made in order to make it marketable and usable again were not there. There was a passivity and a kind of inertia associated with this site. Money had been brought forward to sort of do the groundwork, and that was seen to be enough. People were supposed to come and tell Medway that they wanted to be there, and the previous administration didn't have to put their back into actually making it work. It's been a completely different attitude, hugely responsive turnaround from the officers to get this to where it is, and commensurately, of course, the level of interest. And on the sister part of the southern site, of course, Care for Medway coming forward in the same way. So we will now have a gateway into Medway that says there is a lively, thriving economy here. We welcome business, we welcome innovation, we welcome expansion. This is a place where you can get a good job. And I think that's an incredibly important message to continue to send out. But as you have both rightly acknowledged, it's hard won, and a huge amount of effort has gone into this. And we're lucky to have the professional officers around us and their contacts and other people that we have relied on to be able to fulfill our ambition, not to leave it there as a sort of open site with hoardings outside, hoping that, against hope actually, that someone will come. Here we are, putting things in place, and I'm really looking forward to what this whole area, north and south, will be able to be.
Thank you very much. Any other colleague? No, I think well summed up by three colleagues around the table. From my perspective, this is something which doing nothing was never an option. And I think, as Teresa said, almost from, well, actually before day one, frankly, we were very clear that we needed to get on and find a solution. And we've looked at different solutions. And I think what we've now got in front of us, and of course we can't share that at this stage, but I think it's an exciting option, which I think when we can share it, I think people will be pleased to see this council working progressively with a great partner. So I will hand back to Harinda to finish this item, please.
Thank you, Vince, and thank you, Teresa, for the supporting comments. Would like to also place on record my thanks to the team, and also in particular Tay, who works incredibly hard with the site to get it across. So as recommended in, I've just got to find out which. Does anyone know which item it is? 1.1. Like to move as recommended in 1.1.
Thank you very much. Is that recommendation agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Let's move to item 11, Medway Development Company Phase 2 sites. Luella, over to you.
Thank you, Vince, and thank you, Sonny E, for the report. So this report concerns itself with the Medway Development Company Phase 2 sites, which, due to the commercially sensitive nature, are in the appendix, and I won't be naming them in any discussion. So I'll just talk about the detail of why we want the funding. So as we know, MDC have been working in partnership with the council and have previously with our phase 1 site secured significant grant funding to support the delivery of development on our brownfield sites. And as we know, major developers, other regular developers do not have an interest in the brownfield sites purely because of the investment involved in making them good to develop. So we've been pressing on with a brownfield first process that we've been following, and this report is asking for us as the Cabinet to note the content, but also recommend to full council the addition of 1.8 million to the council's revenue budget in order to progress the planning applications in respect of the phase 2 sites to make them ready for grant funding as and when it becomes available to apply for. So it will put all the sites in a good state, ready to go, and it'll allow the council to continue with the regeneration of brownfields sites in the area. And I should note that the 1.8 million is to be met from the sale of property as part of the property review. So the viability of each site has been assessed, and this, along with the potential financial returns, are detailed in the exempt papers that we've all seen. But obviously, due to the commercially sensitive nature, I'm not going to share the contents of that. But the Cabinet is asked to note the risks outlined in the paper, such as market uncertainty, inflationary pressures, and additional resources that might be required. I should note that this will support the regeneration of the brownfield sites, the development there, and the additional homes that we need. It'll also support our local plan housing targets, including the much needed affordable housing that we talk about. It will create communities and support the local economy and job opportunities. And we have seen that firsthand, Simon, at the Strood Civic site. So that's already happening, and this will go some way towards increasing those prospects for people. So it should be noted that without grant funding, which we want this to help us to achieve, the sites would not be viable. So I'm asking you to really take this consideration and make the recommendation to full council. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you. I'll take Harinder first, then Teresa, then Simon.
Thank you, Vince. Thank you, Councillor Brent, for opening with that. I would like to say, actually, with lots of arm's length development companies across the country, there have been some negative headlines with a lot of them, and it kind of leaves, I don't know, reputation for certain companies and certain councils that maybe sort of people will sort of maybe shy away from. But actually, I'd like to, with MDC, it's well run, it's prudent, there's a track record of delivery, and I was skeptical, if I'm going to be completely honest, coming into the administration as MDC as a model for delivery. However, the closer and closer I looked at it, and the more I've investigated in terms of how they operate, how they deliver, what their margins are, I actually genuinely believe that the sites that they're delivering wouldn't be delivered otherwise, and that's the main benefit of delivering it in this manner, that they're essentially covering for market failures for sites that otherwise would not be delivered. And from time to time, you'll see maybe comments or people will mention things like, oh, there's flats going up everywhere. But that's from a different time when actually flats were sort of essentially box construction, not really well considered for living, not really, there's no place-based approach for the way that flats were designed. That's not the way that MDC are delivering these sites. The units are really fantastic units to live in. They really make really develop not just the immediate area for living, but the surrounds as well. And it makes the entire sort of area feel much more economically vibrant and active. And the alternative to what we're doing with MDC is to essentially leave this brownfield site fallow and not developed, and essentially leave it as an eyesore, which we can't do. So this is coming from someone who was a skeptic to someone who's really turned around. I really think this is the correct way of doing it. So that's why I think there's a lot to support here. And can also say, in terms of the economic delivery and also skills approach, the work that they have been doing in terms of the cohorts that they've been teaching construction skills. So that is to sort of identified sort of needs. So that is youth that are not in education, employment or training. So they're getting training, they're getting qualifications, and there's a I think it's the sixth cohort now they're going through. Councillor Prunty could correct me if I'm wrong. The sixth cohort now of kids getting skills that they otherwise wouldn't have, and some of them have now got gainfully employed as a result. So it's fully support what you've put out here, Councillor Prunty. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa.
Yeah, again, this is an example of a record of delivery. You can be healthily skeptical, and when delivery happens and when it turns into 85% occupation of a whole load of new homes on Chatham waterfront with mixed tenures and a building up of the surrounding area into a place where people actually want to live, with attention to making sure everyone's got access to decent outdoor space, then that's when the skepticism can roll back and we can start to celebrate the support that has been given to MDC. And of course, the steps that we took to regularise the governance of it from the beginning, along with our wholly owned assistive technology company, Kindy, to make sure that probity was a priority at the beginning. And what I would say, to MDC, that they are local people working in their local area that they love. And that is very obvious as well. The things that we've seen have echoed the kind of heritage of Medway, the needs of Medway, and thought carefully about the kind of people that we have here. We've heard from a sort of possible Prime Minister in waiting about growth in every postcode, hope in every heart. And actually, at the end of phase 2, we'd have good reason to say that that has started to happen for Medway, and that we can do more, because as we have seen with other economic drivers, projects like Care for Medway, like Innovation Park North, once you start doing things, other people have the confidence to join in. So, for example, we're seeing people coming forward saying they're going to build a care home. Never enough to solve the problems we've got, but more than we would otherwise have, because taking the lead is important. It's about confidence. It is about hope. And I think especially as a Marmot place, 6 cohorts of young people coming through, getting jobs, getting training in their local area on homes that they will hopefully be able to live in the future is really fantastic, actually. And shows that local councils can do things that the private sector would struggle to do, because we've got the connections. Happy to work with the private sector, happy to show them the way, hope that they will always prioritise local labour. But there's a record of delivery here that shows that you can do those things. And so I'm very pleased that phase 2 is coming. It will be really exciting to see what else can be brought forward, because what has come forward already is good.
Thank you, Teresa. Simon.
Yes, thank you. I think much of what I was going to say has been said by my colleagues, which is fantastic. But I think there's a few additional points. I mean, I think one of the things that has been referred to is that training and provision and stuff like that. O'Halloran and O'Brien are the company involved, and a huge thanks to their engagement and work with us as well. They play a key part in what we're trying to achieve here. This is about delivery, as Teresa said, and about this kind of approach to Medway. I mean, this is phase 2 we're talking about. Phase 1 is already well underway, and people are moving into the properties, and MDC is really functioning incredibly well. And I think that's thanks to a number of different factors. The insight that our legal team saw as to how we could set up the subcommittees and the way the LATCOs works, and the local authority trading companies, of which MDC is one, how that works is really good, and new directors are coming on board and all that kind of thing. So it's a growing, exciting company now. On the opposite side of the fence, in the planning area, 40% brownfield is what we've promised to deliver in our new local plan. Well, this is starting to happen already, and it's brilliant, and it's exciting to see that delivery of brownfield land that's, like Councillor Meyer was saying, is sitting there redundant. And the transformation of buildings that we're seeing, even Mountbatten House is being transformed into something that's actually quite attractive. So, I mean, I think there is so much good coming out of this work. I'm looking forward to phase 2 going forward. And I think the important thing is to note that what does that mean for our economy? Again, like we were talking about with IPM, that's a massive uplift to our economy. It's going to see a transformation. If you look at the new people moving into Chatham Town Centre as we speak, they're spending their money locally. The shops are loving it. There's more business coming in. We see on the civic site over in Strood, the Strood Town Centre can't wait for people to move in there and see what that boost to their economy will bring about. It's that kind of approach that we've now got going full belt really in Medway, and that's an exciting time to come. I mean, Vince mentioned earlier about what it means to be a unitary. This is what it means to be a unitary. We can do the whole process from start to finish. I was talking to some colleagues earlier today at a meeting from district and county level, and they were complaining that at county level they can't deliver all the planning stuff, they can only do a bit, and the district was saying we don't have control of the strategic stuff. Well, unitaries have both, and we can deliver it, and we've got the team and the staff and the expertise to do that. So this is a really another good example of how combined collaborative working under good leadership from you guys has been really bearing fruit already, and it's an exciting future for Medway. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before I go back to Luella, we had a very helpful briefing from MDC last night to get a bit more granular detail, as you'd expect for an item of this nature. And again, rightfully, we can't go into the detail of that tonight, but it's an exciting programme, and one I think the residents of Medway will be pleased to see coming forward. Worth remembering, because again, this is one of these amazing urban legends that I never really understand where they come from. For the avoidance of doubt, these properties, those that we are selling, between 65 and 85% of those are going to ME postcode residents. They're not all being built for a single London borough, of which we haven't sold a single property to in the case of Lewisham. Although if you were to read Facebook, you'd think that's where every property in the whole of Medway is going. That's simply not the case. And of course, you know, that's critically important from my perspective, because as the strategic overview, working with everybody around the cabinet, we've got to ensure that we're doing everything we can to reduce those 1,000 children who are in temporary accommodation, those individuals who are, frankly, in substandard private rented sector, and you, Luella, through the work that you're doing in a number of these key priorities for us, are tackling that head on. So from my perspective, this is part of the reason why the MDC model that we now have in place, and I agree with Harinder's concerns when we first came in, we needed to understand that. We needed to improve the governance, and that's not a criticism of any one individual, just the members were in the wrong place under the previous administration. Not my words, the words of SIPFA, actually. So from that perspective, we've made good progress. And this next phase, I think, will take it to another level, which will help tackle the housing crisis and make sure that we are doing things which Medway residents want us to see, helping reduce that housing requirement for temporary accommodation. Back to you, Luella.
Thank you, everyone, for your support and comments. Just to highlight, as Teresa said, we have got evidence of what can be done right here in Chatham, actually. We've got Garrison Point down the road, and as Simon says, Mountbatten House is coming along, Strood Civic is coming along. Chatham waterfront down there is complete. So we have got evidence, and as you rightly said, Vince, there is no agreement with the Lewisham Council or anything of a sort. There are
Ridiculous.
people moving into those properties that come from a ME postcode. So also, as Herinda and Simon mentioned there about the training scheme, and every month there's been a cohort this year with the aim, working in conjunction with the OHOP Academy, to give placements for 100 people. And I should point out, as they mentioned, those not in education or employment or training, they make sure, if there's anyone in those circumstances, that there are reserved spaces each month on each cohort to make sure people who are in that situation do get the opportunity to join the that month's cohort. So there is provision there, and we've seen it firsthand in operation, and what they're achieving and learning. And there is a record of people being recruited from that, local people. And I was pleased to see the people that took part in that training did come from Medway postcodes. So it is very local, as you say, Teresa. The people at MDC are local, and they are fully aware of what we need here in Medway. So I'll just go over the recommendations to move, and then that will be me. So 1.1, the Cabinet is asked to note the report and recommend to full Council the addition of 1.8 million to the Council's revenue budget to progress planning applications in respect of the MDC Phase 2 development sites, whilst also noting the flexibility to apply the funding to alternative sites that may be added to the programme listed in Appendix 1. The budget from this is funded from capital receipts under flexibilities granted by the Government. 1.2, the Cabinet is asked to delegate authority to the Director of Place in consultation with the portfolio holder for housing and homelessness to award planning submission grants to MDC subject to an outline business case. Move.
Thank you. Are colleagues happy to agree to recommendations, including the recommendation to full Council?
Agreed.
Thank you. We'll come to the final item, which I'll take in Alex's absence. This is Gateway 1 on our really important issue of highways infrastructure contract. Refer colleagues to move the recommendation as laid out in paragraph 1. Can I thank Ruth and her team for the amazing work here? This is important to get this first report in front of us. And it's worth saying that, again, recognising the challenges around local government reorganisation, it is appropriate for a contract of this nature to be 7 years for an initial term, not 21 years, like another well-known authority of highways responsibility. So I'm really pleased that we've got this at the right level. It is important to make sure we're not finishing a contract on the 31st of March 2028 as well. I'll refer colleagues to, in particular, paragraph 2.6, because I think that really clearly lays out the three things that we will be going through on this gateway process. Lot 1, put simply, is the day-to-day highways maintenance for Medway. Lot 2, we are about 300 metres away from our well-known tunnel. We can have our views about how we ended up with responsibility for that. Some of us said it was a poor deal, but we are where we are now. So that will be a specific lot looking at a specific specialist contractor. And then lot 3 is something around larger planned projects and improvement work. So this is something which is above and beyond the normal day-to-day activity that you'd expect for a highways authority like Medway. It may well be that those who are successful in lot 1 and lot 2 look to seek to be in lot 3. That will be a matter for them, and it will be a matter for us as to whether they're successful in that process. But just to be clear, it is 3 different lots. It will go through the process as laid out in the documentation, and of course, it will come back here as you would expect for our final sign-off later on in the process. So you can see the value of the contract. This is not a small amount of money, so it's important for the residents of Medway we get this right. So it's important as well that we get on with it as quickly as possible. So on that basis, happy to move the recommendations in Alex's absence. Any questions or comments? If not, colleagues happy to agree to recommendation?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. That concludes tonight's Cabinet meeting. Enjoy the rest of the evening and come on, England. Thanks, everybody.